Thank you so much, Apalele, to come and listen to our guru present.
I think the mic muted.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. There we go.
I don't know, sorry. Because I saw myself
No problem.
unmuting myself, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, I was
No
trying
problem.
to say that, let me introduce myself first. For those who don't know me, I am Madi Tsipi from the National School of Government. I am also the LISLIC chairperson. And today I've arranged this presentation, which is so going to be informative for us. I think it's going to be very informative for us as special libraries. I want to take this opportunity to also introduce our guest, Mr. Isak van der Walt, who is a guru in this presentation of the artificial intelligence. Mr. van der Walt serves as a digital scholarship and innovation manager for the Department of Library Service at the University of Pretoria. He has been associated with the university since 1999, specializing in academic ICT and information services. Isak holds the position of head of the Digital Services and System Unit, where he strategically implements projects to enhance the value of UP and library services. With over 20 years of experience, Isak possesses extensive knowledge of emerging trends in academic librarianship. He is a seasoned conference speaker and has presented at over 60 national and international conferences and workshops. Wow, congratulations, Isak. Isak is a co-founder and project lead of South Africa's first academic market space. He also leads the implementation of Africa's first robot librarian, known as Libby. Currently, Isak is dedicated to establish a digital scholarship center at the University of Pretoria, fostering new forms of scholarly output and research discovery. Furthermore, Isak actively contributes to the Research Data Management Steering Committee, providing technical advice on RDM. He also serves as a technical lead for the South African Sustainable Development Hub, where he leads an artificial intelligence project to enhance research discovery. As a passionate digital strategist, Isak embraced disruptive technologies and services that revolutionize traditional practices. His relentless pursuit of innovation has made him a respected figure in the academic community. If you want to know more about Isak, you can go to LinkedIn and join and ask Isak to befriend you, and then you will hear a lot about Isak at that LinkedIn site. Colleagues, let's clap our hands in welcoming our own Isak van der Walt. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for that introduction. That is quite a bio. I think they need to cut half of that out. Yes, 20 years, you can see the gray hairs in my beard. Nonetheless, thank you for the invitation and thank you for allowing me to share with you some of the latest trends and technologies and things that are happening in libraries, and they also relate to not just academic libraries. I think we're all quite aware of the changing environment around us. Big disruptors like earlier this year or end of last year, ChatGPT, and how this influences us. And I think it's fair to say that it will affect all areas of society, not just academic libraries as an example. I know there's people on the session as well from academic backgrounds as well, but it relates and translates and filters into different areas as well. So the title, as you can see, is There Are Strangers animals. So, you know, we can't ignore them. And a sure way to end the profession or the library is to ignore all of this and say we're going to carry on as always. I know it's probably the most dangerous thing as within any you know uh, job or profession, if you can say it like that. So I just want to start off with this quote by Daniel H. Wilson, also passionate in terms of technology and writing on it. And the true knowledge is not in the things, but it's in the ability to connect those dots. So finding the connections between the things. So a lot of these technologies exist. You know, you can go and buy a robot now. You can buy subscriptions to AI-based platforms and that type of stuff. But it is seeing the connections in how they translate in our libraries. So, you know, how are you going to apply artificial intelligence in a library? How are you going to apply robotics, Internet of Things? So we have a lot of ground to cover today. And please, I think we're obviously going to have questions and answers, but I'm going to change things a little bit up in a sense that I'm going to pose the challenges in the beginning so that you actually are aware of them and think about this as I go along, and then also have your questions, right? So first off, I like to always start with this, and I hope you can actually see the video as it progresses. These are our future clients, whether we are a public library, whether we at the university, school libraries. Our future clients are children that are being exposed to some of these latest technologies and trends. And I mean, this is even in South Africa, we have schools that focus on robotics, on coding, and that type of stuff. So we also have to, as libraries and institutions, advance to say, okay, but we need to make sure that we're able to cater for these people so that whatever we teach them, whatever we give them access to, is relevant. You know, 15 years ago, a 3D printer was reserved for someone in engineering or a computer science lab or wherever. But now it's a common thing. You can find a 3D printer in incredible connection, go and buy it and set it up at your house. It's that easy to get it started, right? So, but I'm not talking about the disparity in society, but it is as easy as going to buy yourself a 3D printer, to buy yourself robotics, or whatever the case might be. But we're going to get into the role that libraries can play with regards to that. So we want to make sure in future that the transition for our children and the education and what we provide to general society is to say, you know, you can get access to this when you come to the library. It is not reserved for someone special. It is not reserved. Anybody can gain access to that. I just want to see there if there's a chat. Right. Yeah, it's the questions. I just want to make mention that you can also post the questions in the chat box. Right. So those are our future clients. So we need to cater for them. Right. So should we be afraid of this? You know, and what you're seeing there in this video is one of Boston Dynamics robots. It's a robot called Atlas, and very, uh, very technologically advanced robot. You can see there actually the movements and the jumps and whatever it can take. Right, so it's quite scary to think about this. You know, you would think to yourself, oh wow, you know, in 10 years' time, we need to have someone to put books on a shelf, as an example, or to carry something. You know, if you look, I can't even jump like that. You know, so we have to be mindful of what's happening in this space. But should be afraid? Not yet. You know, there's always obviously a risk with technology. But if you look at how they struggled with this robot, you know, you can see the failures there. Um, so I just want to confirm you all can hear me. There's not a sound issue from my side. Someone can just confirm.
Yeah, sure, we can hear you.
Perfect.
Yes,
Thank
we
you.
can.
All right. I
Yes.
just wanted to make sure. All right. All right. So obviously it's not foolproof, and it's dependent on us setting it up and moving forward with it. All right. So who are these strangers that we are facing? Well, I think almost the number one is artificial intelligence. Right? They're not ranked in this slide, but I mean it comes up. Artificial intelligence, and it affects everything in the work that we do, the resources we provide, how we operate in our daily lives, and so forth. If you think about using Google Maps to go home, it's algorithms and it's information, it's intelligent systems figuring out the fastest route for you to go home. So it's not something that is 10 years in the future, it's now. When you go on to Takealot and you want to order something and they make the recommendations at the bottom of something similar or something that you might be interested, it's artificial intelligence and algorithms working to make those predictions. So we need to check how it changes the library environment, but also how libraries can benefit off of that. So I'm going to show you a beautiful example of that. Big data and analytics. We live in this era where there's so much information, and big data and analytics actually ties into some of the challenges that we have, because we can become more efficient in terms of analyzing the data that we have, making sure that we provide the right services, the right time, the right cost and so forth to become more efficient, especially in budget constrained environments. We can use this information to work for us. Virtual reality and augmented reality. I'm going to show you some beautiful examples as well. So, and you saw the intro video where libraries can play a role in providing access to people for these information or these spaces, provide training, give people exposure, and enrich experience, whether it is for teaching, learning, or research, which is general access for people to provide it to them. Blockchain technologies to verify information, to make this information secure in the transactions, and also to provide provenance verification, using blockchain to verify that someone finished their degree, using blockchain technologies. Internet of Things as well, big thing. If you look at occupancy detection as an example in the library, you want to know how many people at any given moment is on your library, on your different levels, making use of a specific space. And IoT devices are already in some instances in these spaces and can make use of them. Digital humanities, we're going to touch on that. Well, in my domain, it's called digital scholarship, but it's not just reserved for academic libraries only, right? Anybody that uses any form of teaching, learning, or research to do whatever they want to do, that's considered digital scholarship, but we list it as digital humanities there, but we'll get you the term. Obviously, because we're getting more exposed to digital technologies and tools, we have a bigger exposure to threats in terms of cybersecurity, gaining access to information. I had a talk, not my own talk, attended a talk in last week from a cybersecurity expert, and also they made mentions of libraries. People using our resources, hacking our resources for various expensive subscriptions that we pay. So those threats are real. And then online communities, such as this one as an example, where people now meet online, where people confer online, where they plan online, and share knowledge online, and how these communities are formed. Digital preservation, obviously, we're used to preserving our old historic material and books, and we're familiar with digitization, digitizing old books or old film and so forth. But now there's a whole magnitude of things being created in this new environment, whether it is, I'm going to say, a TikTok video, is that information preserved? Where is it preserved? How is it preserved? This recording that we're doing right now, how is that going to be preserved? What are the rights implications and so forth in terms of doing that? And also the big thing as well, open access and educational resources and the transformation that's happening in that sphere, in it gaining a little bit more traction as well. I know at UP we obviously have a lot of transformational agreements and a big push towards giving more access to some of our resources, open access. right? But it doesn't come without its challenges. So here are the challenges, and we're going to discuss them a little bit later. But the first thing is digital transformation. I think the difficult bit is to understand what our role is in digital transformation. It's not just buying technologies, but also how it fits into the library space and frame. What are the skills that we require? What is the resources, financial resources that we require? How will our jobs change? If you look at, as an example, in our environment, a cataloger, 10 years ago versus what a cataloger is doing now and can do and contribute towards the organization, it's changed dramatically. So we need to make sure that our staff are trained up, our staff are able to delve into other areas in terms of their careers. If you look at the top skills required in 2015 versus 2010, 2020, 2015 and 2020, dramatic change. You're looking at more cognitive skills today required to participate in this digital environment. Information overload. I think we're all aware. If I just take myself on my phone, the amount of apps that I have, different social media, not just one, different social media profiles, the amount of information, and then obviously the ability to work through that information. To look at information that's false, damaging information. We're going to touch on that a bit as well. Privacy security is always an issue. It's also the challenge if you know some of the strangers that we're not familiar with. Copyright and licensing. Just yesterday, I saw the article on the 15th of August. The Internet Archive is being sued for $400 million by major record companies because the Internet Archive digitized old vinyl records, and now they're facing a 400 million rand lawsuit. Because for me, the Internet Archive digitizing this is very novel, and it preserves the history of music. And now they suddenly have a $400 million lawsuit on their hands. So we need to understand copyright. Sorry, I see someone said that I'm muted. I don't think I'm muted. We have confirmed that someone can hear me. So that is a question. Equitable access. We are aware of the challenges in the country of people getting access to resources, getting access to digital resources, access to tools and technologies. I'm a big proponent for the democratization of infrastructure, where people can get access to a 3D printer. People can get access to a virtual reality headset. Obviously, within our environment, it needs to be a UP student, but that's a role that libraries can play. Say, the community library can buy a 3D printer and people can actually come there and get exposure to that, test out their ideas, test out, and help them with entrepreneurship, as an example, or get access to virtual reality. Another big challenge is funding and budget. These tools and technologies are not cheap. Some of them are getting cheaper than they used to. Back in the day, a 3D printer was 49,000 Rand. You can get a very good 3D printer for 10,000, even a little bit less than that these days. Changing user expectations. Right, so it relates to the first slide, where people are getting exposed to these things, not just in libraries. So it also becomes sort of a survival thing for libraries to understand that people have other avenues to gain access to this. Right. We don't want a person to walk to the library and they think, great, I'm going to get access to a 3D printer. I'm going to get access to consultation on AI or someone that can guide me and help me find the resource. And then they get there and it's the same library as 15 years ago, or 20 years ago. Right. So we need to do that. And some libraries, even our own, we have a dedicated UX librarian that guides people on the user experience, guides the library. and does surveying and consultations with people to kind of measure what their expectations are in terms of services. Information literacy still as relevant as always, but the challenge with the information, the overload of information, becomes so much more challenging. How do we provide access to training or guidance to people on what are the right resources that they should be looking at? Staff and training, big challenge as well. We're going to get to that because I can't expect a librarian to suddenly become a software developer or a coder. I can give training, but there's also different levels of what I can do and expect of an individual. And then last is obviously the preservation of digital content, which I mentioned earlier. We have this massive amount of digital content that's being generated. So how are we preserving that for the future, and what should we preserve? Okay, so those are the bulleted lists. There's no more lists, I hope. So let's carry on. I'm going to show you a whole range of things that are happening in these libraries. And as I mentioned earlier, connect the dots to see how the technologies, the previous changes that I've mentioned, how it's being applied differently. There's not a single application for artificial intelligence in a library. There's multiple. The same with Internet of Things devices and so forth. So let's start with that. So I was fortunate enough earlier this year to attend one of the IFLA satellite conferences in Singapore to go look at the artificial intelligence in libraries. Now, what's interesting to note is their libraries or the conference focused predominantly on public libraries. Right, so you can actually look into this article. It goes to show you the academic libraries, but again, it's still relevant. So the first item there, this by Dr. Andrew Cox, it's the librarian competencies needed within this, so very relevant article. I'm going to make the slides available in any way to the group, so you can take screenshots, but the links are active, so you can go afterwards and have a look at them. So in his research, he identified 7 types of AI in libraries. The first one being AI in personal productivity. Now, oftentimes people are afraid to raise their hands. I don't. I use ChatGPT in my work, right? I use ChatGPT to lay out a framework for me. I choose ChatGPT to do the bulk of writing for a motivation on specific items. So we can use artificial intelligence to help us in our daily lives, be that even if it is to do data analysis. There's a platform called Julius.ai, and you actually just give that AI platform an Excel file and it will actually tell you what you're looking at and analyze the data for you without being a data scientist. So that back-end libraries in terms of efficiency, monitoring your collection, enhancing your collection. So you can integrate AI into your backend systems, your services, and knowledge discovery. You read this book, I recommend this book for you. You read this would be also a feature within the genre that you like. Data scientist communities, we talked about online communities. AI is a dimension in information literacy. So to also make people aware of what AI, where it fits into information literacy, content that's being generated by AI, the falsification of information. We're going to touch on that as well. Monitoring and predicting behavior. Now, the last one, I need to really, this is one of the best examples I've ever seen. In one of the public libraries in Singapore, they use their Wi-Fi networks to, in real time, look at the amount of, sorry, let me just mute the sound here, right? To analyze the occupancy in their libraries. This was during COVID. So they could see immediately where people are basically congregating and there's a big concentration of people in the library. So they use their Wi-Fi access points to determine where the hotspots are in the library. And then they send their robot. The robot that you see there on screen is called Temi. It's a robot as a service. You rent the robot to do the work for you. And they send this robot to go and disperse people. Tell people, listen, there's another area in the library. There's too many people in this area, so please go to a different area. Right, so very, very good method of using artificial intelligence, machine learning, data analysis to actually say to a library, become more efficient, become compliant during COVID. Another beautiful example is this one from the collections management at the Audiovisual Collection of Australia. So they use a platform there called Grey Meta Curio. And this platform goes through all the content in their digital collections. It goes through videos, it goes through, audio, and it analyzes, it does speech to text, text to speech, video to text, everything, where it then indexes videos that relate to Isak van Walt, or videos that relate to, I don't know why this is jumping, videos that relate to, a specific topic or whatever the case might be. So please, when you get the slides, go and have a look at their collection. It is really impressive. Then lastly, as well, just to show you again the level of this, this is the public library that I also visited in partnership with NEC. They employed or deployed a lot of robotics and AI in their libraries. I think it's also an indication to libraries to not try and do this in isolation. You need to partner with other institutions. You need to partner with corporate or private entities to do some of these things. So this is an example of the public library in the main public library in Singapore. Oh no, this is not the main one. This is another one. All right. It seems the audio is not showing or playing. Right, so if not, I can just play you through it or talk you through it. So basically they, in this public library, have 3 sets of robotics working in unison to optimize the library. So first of what they have is the NFC robot that you saw in the beginning. So NFC robot that walks through RFID bot that walks between the shelves and scans the books. So they get a clear picture of their collection and where it is every day in real time. So as soon as that robot scans, they actually know where all the books are. In line with that, they have a book drop robot. So there's the NFC robot that you can see at the moment. That's the shelf reading bot. Then they have a book drop robot that also moves up and down in the library. And people take their books, and you don't need to go to a counter or whatever. You just walk past that book drop robot, drop in your book. That robot will then, once it's filled up, go to the back office where they sort the books. And this robot then drops that onto a robotic book sorter. So it goes onto a conveyor belt and it drops the books where they are supposed to go. And then ultimately, a human person then takes the books back to the shelf. Right, so they're doing the inventory and collection management with RFID and robotics. They're doing the pickup and book drops with a robot, and then they are sorting the books to go right into the right areas. and then ultimately people get involved to take the books back, right? So you can see how much they've automated in their libraries. Now, if you think about just this, they also analyze how many people are in the libraries doing the heat maps. So it can become quite scary in terms of what it is. But there's also a downside. And this is now where I want to touch more on the information literacy and AI, and especially in our domain in academic libraries. You start seeing headlines like this, where a fake interview of Vladimir Putin using deepfakes is being published on the web, right? So you can imagine the repercussions that something like this can have, where it looks like Vladimir Putin, it sounds like Vladimir Putin, and then suddenly something is being said that can spark a war, all right? This was in 2019. So those things have become way more sophisticated than what they are currently. And it gets closer to home, that was now general public. It gets closer to home where fake science is creating a real crisis for us, and more journals are becoming aware of the risk that's involved with using artificial intelligence. Now, this is a talk that I've started prior to ChatGPT, and I think I've updated it every month. I keep the dates actually because it's just so fast in terms of how it's progressing. Here's a study that was done in terms of fabricated or false data. 8% of research in a Dutch survey have falsified or fabricated the data. That's a study of nearly 7,000 researchers, right? So that's an enormous amount of people that are using different tools and technologies to fabricate and falsify their research. And it's so difficult to detect it. This article, the links are there if you want to go read it a bit later. To create a deep fake, use two different types of neural networks, the one to generate and the other one to detect if it passes as real or not. Okay, so these things are evolving. So what people previously did is the first sort of deep fake videos, the eye movement was not natural. It didn't follow the same blinking patterns as what normal humans did. All right, so then the people, there's always the good and bad side. There's people that use platforms to detect, seeing that the eye movement's false, it's AI. And then they change it. And then within 3 months, they've updated to circumvent detection. Right, so it's constantly changing, this fight between good and evil, fake, not fake. And then you get things like this. AI-generated images could make it almost impossible to detect fake papers. Right, so that specific study, this research article there at the bottom, if you look towards image D, there is one original image there of a slice of esophageal cancer, and the other two are AI-generated images. Now, for me, I'm not a scientist or a person specializing in this type of research. For the life of me, I would not be able to tell that, apart. But, it has a massive effect, because now, as an example, this research paper or this resource, if you think about not just academics settings, is being used in other research papers or other areas or domains. So people are basing their decision making and whatever on false information, right? So as a library, we need to be aware of what's happening in our environment, and what can we do? I mean, we can't write software to detect this as libraries, but we can educate people and inform people of what's going on, right? So this is just an example of more papers being subjected to notices of concern. And you can see there the note from the Chief Journal Officer: the subversion efforts are becoming increasingly sophisticated and now increasingly involve the use of artificial intelligence. So, and it's damaging, not just there. There's a very nice website that I'd urge you to go and have a look at. It's called the incidentdatabase.ai. Now, some of you in the academic setting are aware of something like Retraction Watch. that lists articles that are being retracted. The incident database.ai lists incidents where people have either been harmed or in some ways received unfair treatment based on the use of AI, because biases exist in AI, and it's not always easy to detect biases and where they come from. I can receive a data set that was generated, but it has some historic biases in that I'm not aware of. And it's difficult because that has an effect on tools and systems that are, influencing people's lives. If you look at the South African banking sector, the data that they have of people that were previously disadvantaged, that data sets has an influence on predictions of the future, right? So they need to be aware that there can be biases in their system and to remove those biases from their systems. And that exists everywhere. So please go and have a look at this, and it lists the different areas there. So moving along a little bit further into end of last year and beginning of this year, GPT, ChatGPT, we're all aware of it. I hope you're using it for the right reasons. But people are now listing ChatGPT as authors. There's a group that I share with a bunch of other institutions, and I shared with them an article that was published in Elsevier with a caveat of, if you type in ChatGPT and it says it's an AI model, it actually, they copy and pasted that caveat with their results, and that was actually published, which brings about a whole new list of questions as to who's reviewing this and to what extent. But nonetheless, people are using this in the academic setting. Now, I per se don't have an issue if someone uses artificial intelligence in any form of research. It's about making people aware that you are and informing people that you are. So if I say this list was generated with artificial intelligence, state up front, this is the process, this is what you used. But it's when people try and hide the fact and make it out as their own, that's when it becomes a big issue. Right, so what can libraries do in this era? So first of all, creating awareness, best practices, and identifying false information. We've always been good with this. And I mean, in terms of information literacy, it's not just now that we've been busy informing people, but we need to be aware of the changes, like ChatGPT, to inform a patron or client to say, listen, this is what you look for in terms of information. Be aware that information from something like ChatGPT is not accurate. Don't take that as, fact in terms of what it's presenting to you. Don't use it in a court case. I know there's court cases have been thrown out in the information. And from our side, we need to give people the fundamentals of ethics. Ethics is a very big thing in today's day and age. It's so easy to falsify information, so easy to share the wrong information. So how do I use the information that I have ethically? Is it ethical by nature, by having it in the first place? And what can I do in terms of that? Then our training programs, I'm going to show you what we've done, is internal awareness of the processes, student awareness, academic staff awareness. Libraries can play a role in terms of identifying the falsified information. Also the resources that we acquire, right? Are we acquire valid resources and not just something that's either breaches copyright, provides false information. So we also can play that critical role. Now, from a University of Pretoria perspective, what we've also done is, again, as I mentioned, we need to understand the role of the library. We can't be the experts on artificial intelligence. You might have someone in your library that's a champion on this, and to some extent very technical with regards to this. But we need to understand that I can't, give advice to research in AI on how to use it. But I can definitely provide guidance on ethics, on plagiarism, on deepfakes, on finding fake news or information. So what we've done is, as a library, we've created these different awareness integrity series, and we had people within the library write on their different areas of expertise. And we launched this as an academic series, which we sent out to the whole institution so that they can read up on AI, get exposure, just reiterate the importance of ethical behavior, publish in the right areas and so forth. And that's the extent that we can go to in terms of this. We can't generate the researcher's images for him or a video or any form of data, but we can inform the individual on the ethical approach to do this. And it might be sensitive for a few people. So we are redoing that this year as well. We're going to reiterate it on a semester basis. So we started with the first series this year, first semester. So we're going to relaunch that now for the academics in the second semester. So there's just examples to show you kind of what it looks like. And then there's the one on deep fakes, and then a whole list of resources, right? So what we've also done, the library, is we also work closely with other areas around us to come up with guidelines to the institution. So we're a stakeholder when it comes to academic integrity and the use of generative AI within our environment. So we form part of the Education Innovations Advisory Group, and we've come up with these guidelines to work with generative AI in our environment. So that's also something that we can definitely do. Right, so jumping from AI, we're getting into a domain that's very close to my heart, and that's digital scholarship. Now, if you remember in the beginning, one of the strangers in our environment is digital humanities. So I'm going to go a little bit broader in terms of just humanities, but I'm going to touch on the use of these different technologies and tools in teaching, learning, and research. Now, it can relate to your environment, whether it's a school library or public library, in terms of providing people with access to these technologies. So don't just think it's limited to teaching, learning, and research, also providing people with exposure, giving them access to that infrastructure. As I mentioned, some of the stuff is expensive. So our role as well is to provide people with that platform where they don't have to buy a high-end computer, or they don't have to buy a 3D printer. They can go to their closest library and get access to this, right? So digital scholarship, the definition is any form of teaching, learning, and research that makes extensive use of digital technologies and tools. So this is research that was done by the Association for Research and Academic Libraries. But what I want to point out to you, if you don't form part of this group specifically, is that they did the research and they asked the researchers, whom do they look for guidance when it comes to digital scholarship activities? Right now, there's about 19 in this, and there's probably more now. This was done in 2016, so there's a whole lot more, if you think about artificial intelligence and so forth. Right now, when we talk about strangers, look at these activities listed there. So some of them are part of libraries already: digitization, data curation, digital collections. There's 3D modeling, developing digital scholarship software. So a lot of them seem familiar. But when asked, the researchers said of all those activities, they look towards the library for guidance, right? So one of the challenges that we talked about was users' expectations. All right, so they look towards libraries for guidance on this. Now, what does it look like? All right, so I'm going to show you some of the examples that we've done. And again, connect the dots and translate it to your own environment. So we had a student here at the university, and his lecturer said he's obviously the student's visually impaired. So this student's laptop could read back the text in his PDFs, but obviously the laptop could not read him what the images looked like in terms of his studying material. We're studying physiology. So they approached us, and we used the text images and lifted them out to create 3D printing reading cards for the student. Right, so what you see there is the student's images from his textbook or PDF, electronic version that he has, and here's the lifted out version. So now the student can sit with his tutor, and the tutor can say to him, listen, this is a, if you feel here, this is where there's a break in the structure of the cell, right? And this actually went on to win it was an award-winning paper at a conference, and obviously the student was successful in his studies, and it greatly aided the student. So this is using a 3D printer, 3D design to assist a individual that is visually impaired. So in digital scholarship terms, it assists a person in terms of their learning experience. So you can think to yourself the role that it can play for either a child at a very young age, school that doesn't have the benefit, and a library can assist them in terms of bridging that gap. Now, it is, in terms of what we do in the makerspace, a fairly straightforward process to do this. It's not a very advanced process to do something like this. Here's another example, right? So the health sciences students, please understand that these are examples that relate to us, but they can translate into any other environments. Health science students that had to do a facial reconstruction for a patient with a facial deformity, and they gave us the CT scan that they obviously had, and we 3D printed this facial deformity of this patient for them. So they could go into a discussion room, sit and consult, and figure out how they're going to do this facial reconstruction. Right, so we're not printing the facial reconstruction, but we're giving them something tangible that they can hold and discuss in a group setting. All right, so it's enhancing their experience and what they're going to do. And that was the outcome of the facial reconstruction that they did. This was just a simulation, wasn't the actual patient. And that's what they came up with, and we 3D printed it for them. And then they could go and do it again, or actually go and go further with it. I don't know what the end result was with the patient. It's also used in terms of whether it is for hobbies. So this was someone that created this very rudimentary water sort of savoring thing that cleans water, cleans rocks and sand out of water. On the left hand there is the use of 3D printing to do research with vulture eggs that we did through the makerspace. So the researchers had us 3D print these mini vulture eggs. Inside them was silicone. We put in IoT devices that measures the temperature of that egg inside that, so they could actually then do research on the breeding temperatures for vultures in that nest. And that actually was published in the University's Research magazine as well. So it also goes to show you the impact that a library can have. We always think that we're here, we provide access to journals, but no, we actually give space to people to create new forms of knowledge and new forms of discovery. And it's the library that makes the impact here realize, it can become a reality in terms of what they do. We also do 3D scanning. So now we're going back to libraries in terms of what can we preserve, digital content, digital transformation. We've always been used to digitizing books, but now we're also digitizing physical items, museum statues and stuff like that. But here's another example that we've done. It was researchers that wanted to do a study on vulture wing dynamics for engineering, so aeronautical engineering. And this researcher wanted to study the dynamics of that albatross wing. Obviously, we don't have a lot of access to albatross wings, but we had one in preservation. And we 3D scanned that wing for that researchers to go and do that study. And was also part of the study. Obviously, this is not the PhD or the thesis as of yet, but this was just the article that we published on how it's being used to enhance research for a researcher. And I think we did another scan this year as well for the researcher. So again, different tools and technologies to enhance this. This is a beautiful example that I always talk about, the use of IoT devices. So our first year vet science students have to do palpitation tests on cows, but they're not aware as to how hard or soft they should be pressing when they do these palpitation tests. So we've devised a sensory glove for them where they can actually, by method of the LEDs, measure how hard experienced vets are pressing. And we can indicate to them, you're not pressing hard enough, green, you're pressing the right amount of pressure, or, blue is, not not good enough. And we actually have done a third iteration of that glove for them. Again, the people look towards the library for guidance on these tools and technologies. This is another one in terms of the role that the library plays in terms of providing access to students. So we facilitated the students from, I think it was the informatics department, because we have electronic kits for people to come and play with in the library. The lecturer basically made use of our library spaces, which is the maker space, but it can be any type of innovative space within your library, to go and get access to these kits that they can actually then book out and go do their assignments, right? So not all students have these kits at home or access to it, but they can come to the library and rent out these tools and technologies. So also published in the university's research magazine. One of my favorite ones, and I also urge you to go and have a look, it's the use of AI in terms of research and information discovery. So the SA SDG Hub is the South African Sustainable Development Goals Hub, is a hub here positioned at the University of Pretoria. And we already started this in 2016, where we make use of artificial intelligence to classify research outputs according to the different SDGs, the 17 SDGs. So for us as an institution, it's very beneficial to know which research is related to what specific type of SDG. And I think the link is here, but I'll share the link with you nonetheless. So the SDG Hub harvests all, it was previously just South African universities, harvested all their research outputs, their open access outputs, harvested the metadata, and classified all that research output according to the SDGs, which makes it much easier for government, policy and decision makers to find resource that relates to drinking water, access to education, because they don't necessarily have the time to go and read through every institution's research articles. So we classify that using artificial intelligence, and then making that discoverable for people. So a very nice example of how AI is being applied to enhance that discovery. And then we can give an indication to people as to what it looks like. And then there's other examples that we can go into. Libraries that can play a role in terms of digital exhibitions. You know, to the top left there, you see it was Mandela Day, and we had some of our physical collection there, but we also had digital collections that we had up on some of our portable visualization stations that you can set up and give people a different type of experience when they look at a specific collection. So you can actually have very nice online and physical and sort of hybrid setup in the collections. Top right there, we also assist in terms of robotics, and we assisted the South African Springboks in their competition before they went abroad, and they made use of the space, and some of our assistants in the space gave them guidance on robotics. The two below examples below is the malaria feeders that we printed for the Sustainable Malaria Control Unit on campus, and they usually buy these 3D printed, not 3D printed, glass malaria feeders at about 1,200 Rand a pop, and we 3D print that for them at around 5 Rand each now, right? So making access to resources a lot more easier, right? So what's the role of the library? The role of the library is to be the space, physical and virtual, and not only the lab for just humanities, but for everybody essentially, all disciplines, all walks of nature. So I'm again a big proponent of everybody should be able to have access. So we have a makerspace which is beneficial to our environment, but you might have innovation spaces, but basically those spaces can become an extension of some of these initiatives that we are doing and that you can be doing. All right, so I'm not going to go through all of this. So what are these centers that I'm now trying to establish? And I'm going to show you now how we address some of the issues. But if you look at the cost that I just spoke about, equitable access and to give people access to these environments, think about what I'm showing you there and how, if I told you 10 years or 15 years ago, this should be in the library. Collaborative spaces, 15 years ago, a library should be a quiet space, not allowed to collaborate or whatever. Now, it's almost unheard of to have, no space in your library where people can't collaborate and share ideas, share poems, share what they're doing. So we're looking into digital classrooms. We're already doing that. Recording studios. I'm going to show you something just now regarding that. Makerspaces, digital archives, research consultations, digital displays, and secure storage for people to back up other confidential information. So we have a big role to play in terms of what people expect and what we can do for them. Right, so now I'm coming back to UP to show you what we are planning to do. Right, so those of you who have visited us in terms of Makerspace, and if not, you're more than welcome to visit us. You can arrange with me and I'll put you in contact and we can actually organize a visitation. We have the current Makerspace. If you look at the arrow right there, that's currently the space that we're taking up to do all this space, these spaces. Now, I don't know how I managed it, but I'm going to get this whole wing in future, right? So it's quite a large area if you look at the space. So we already approved phase 1 and I'm meeting the architects tomorrow. Yeah, it's tomorrow. So we're going to break through the space here and we're going to set up our 2 virtual reality stations there. And I'm going to show you our other examples of VR in the library, where people can actually get exposure to virtual reality or augmented reality and play around with it, whether it's for fun, or whether it's for research, or whether it's for learning. We want to give people that exposure to these technologies. That's the main role. I'm not a VR expert, nor can the people working in the space be VR experts, but they can provide guidance and access to that. So you can see how that role has changed in terms of providing access to information to now also providing access to infrastructure, access to different types of resources that we were not used to doing. And then consultation rooms here. Now, if you go to look at the full plan, we're going to have gaming stations where people participate in either esports or whatever type of gaming, but also to provide that fun access to that. Also, if people want to start creating their own games or environments and do development, we're going to have robotic stations. We're going to have video and podcast recording rooms there. So anyone, whether you want to record your own music video or set up a podcast, you can do that within the library. Very beneficial, especially in public libraries, for people to be able to generate and create content. Then a full bigger VR. So we're doing phase 1 now first, and then phase 2 will be this area. So a larger virtual reality space there. And then also cinemas. Right, so what it will typically look like, industrial look and feel, very different to the types of spaces that we are used to. And also in terms of what we can do for communities is we're going to have a shop front where students can sell the products that they make or that they create. So also to start enabling and supporting entrepreneurship or the entrepreneurship value chain at the university. We have a few different segments in terms of that, and we're currently already playing a role, and a role that libraries can play is to support people in that. The reason primarily where we also encourage entrepreneurship and provide guidance on entrepreneurship is not everybody that gets a degree will get a job, but we want to make sure that students that leave the university are skilled enough to be able to choose their own career path and set up their own business and so forth. So we play that role for them in terms of that shop front, and then a nice flexible space. So that's up and coming for us in the future. But then we also have this, our recently launched new health sciences library. And if you look at this picture here, it doesn't really show it. I hope you can see there. Those are the bookshelves, right? So we have hidden a little bit further back in the library, a whole range of full shelves with books, but the way libraries look and feel are also changing, right? So it's not just books, shelves and shelves of books. It's a dynamic space, a flexible space where people can go and converse and collaborate. So this library is very open. This library also has a virtual reality toy box or XR, extended reality toy box, where students can go and play or learn or do research. So it has about 14 different types of virtual reality headsets. So you see some of them right here, and then some of our, I'm going to say, cheaper headsets right here. And then they can gain access to, learning platforms where they meet virtually online to collaborate. And it doesn't cost students a thing to use this. They literally, if they're in between class or they're rounds in the hospital and they just want to go relax in a augmented reality or VR environment, they're more than welcome to go to this. And then obviously new RFID technology that we're deploying in this library. We're going to be using indoor navigation. So we're installing a information screen where people can go up with their cell phones, scan a QR code, and we'll navigate them indoor to where their resource is that they're looking for. And we're just waiting for the screen to be installed. So we're piloting that now as well with the types of new technologies that exist within this library. All right, so I just want to make sure I'm good for time, right? Just want to make sure that there's enough time. Indication was a long session, I think. Right, I'm going to carry on.
We are still on the right track. Isak, we can carry
Perfect.
on.
All right. Okay. So I do understand that it's a lot of information that I'm throwing at you. You're more than welcome as well to afterwards contact me if you have any queries. Right. So the other thing that I want to touch on, and this now comes a little bit closer to home for us as individuals, is digital literacy. Right. So I've now shown you a lot of interesting technologies and tools and things, but we need to look at ourselves as individuals and organizations on how digital literate we are. So we're quite aware in the information science domain what information literacy is. And there's research literacy or academic literacy, multimedia literacy. But digital literacy, basically, the most recent definition there is the ability to use information and communication technologies to find, evaluate, create, and communicate information requiring both cognitive and technical skills. Now, it's essentially what we've been used to, but in the digital sphere. So, I mean, I can put down a virtual reality headset. So from a library perspective, am I digitally literate enough to be able to provide this as a service for someone? And they can basically use the different technologies and tools. And if they are not able to, what do we need to train them? So for me, digital literacy is very important in the sense that I want to make sure that everybody in the organization has the ability to move forward when we transform digitally. Now, this is such an important point, especially for the University of Pretoria, that we recently launched our digital transformation strategy that's headed up by the COO's office. And the library is responsible for goal 1, objective 1, which is the evaluation of digital literacy skills at the institution. So again, the role that the library plays is very, very important at the institution. Right, so a lot of stress for me in the past 6 months, but that's nonetheless. So it's important for us so that we are able to use and consume and create a variety of content in this new day and age. Now, there are quite a few digital literacy frameworks that exist out there, and I'm not going to go through them in detail, but there's the Virginia Tech framework, the essential elements, digital literacy framework. But what you'll see when you go through these different types of frameworks is there's a common theme throughout. So based on my research on the different literacies, the most famous one, well, the most total and comprehensive one is the one from JISC that includes multiple literacies. So it's not just digital literacy, it's ICT literacy, information literacy, media literacy. So you can see there in terms of providing consultation, providing training, very important role that the libraries can play in terms of helping its community, whether it is how to find resources, how to communicate, how to collaborate, discover and support and create. We have a very important role to play. So based on this those different frameworks, I've come up with this one for the University of Pretoria, and we've accepted this as the digital transformation strategy. And this is the one that we're evaluating. So we're looking at information and data, communication and collaboration, and all of them. Information data is your ability to work with information and find information, work with data, discover it, create it in the digital world. Communication and collaboration, how do you fit into this digital world? How do you communicate with others like we're doing now? How do you share? How do you publish? Where do you publish? So what is your fit in the digital world? The other one is content creation, right? So are you able to create a Word document? Can you create a PowerPoint? Can you create a PDF from a Word document? Or can you program, can you use something like Python or R to code? The other one mentioned previously, the challenges and the strangers, cybersecurity threats. How do you conduct yourself, protect yourself, and ethically conduct yourself in this new digital world? And lastly, your digital environment. How do you troubleshoot your environment? How do you set up your environment to do what you need to do? Not me per se, but I hand you a new laptop and you already know what you need on it to conduct yourself. So are you able to troubleshoot it? Your laptop doesn't connect to Wi-Fi. Can you help yourself? Can you determine what's wrong if the printer doesn't want to print? Okay, so what we have to do is to evaluate those areas. So we've developed a digital literacy assessment tool here at the University of Pretoria. That's a self-paced process that evaluates an individual's understanding or concepts of those different elements. We've finished our pilot with a small department. The library is now going to do its assessment as from next week. So we approved that through EXCO. And then once that's done, the whole institution will be doing this, and it will be compulsory for the whole institution. But it's not to say to people, Isak doesn't know what he's doing, he can't create a Word document. This is us saying, Isak, you need to be able to do this. And then we're also with the assessment, we look at how you perform and we make recommendations. So there's no fail or pass. You do the assessment, it goes from beginner to advanced, and it tells the individual, based on how you did, we recommend the following training for you. Because it's for us as an institution really important just to participate in this digital domain. Right, so that's just some of the examples as to, what we ask people. We had to change it a little bit. I was a bit too over eager in terms of what I asked people, so we had to change the type of questions. But it's a lengthy thing to do, and it takes about an hour for people to do this assessment. But the university's done the change management to inform people to put time aside, and we, as I mentioned, it's a compulsory assessment that we have to do at the institution, right? But now you might have the question in your mind that I can't be everything in terms of what's available that I've just shown you, nor can any of my colleagues do and support all of that. So a very nice concept that libraries can do is to do something called boundary staffing, where the library can provide a lot of resources and consultation and training and so forth, not using one individual, but using multiple people to look into groupings. So you can say, Isak is a specialist in 3D modeling and design, also database development. So I can form part of that group of staff that can at least address this, because you can't expect an individual to be able to support all of that. I mean, it's generally just not possible. But you can have a group of staff skilled, informed on certain topics that can provide guidance. So you're able as a library to say, we can provide training and consultation on 3D printing, can provide access to the following resources, making use of our boundary staff within the institution. Right, so it's important to know where you are. So, a recommendation that I can give is to do that evaluation with your library or a segment of different libraries to say, where are we? To get that clear picture of, are we able to conduct ourselves, and where can we find information and go about? So that's important, the digital literacy. It ties into basically all the other areas that I've just showed you. So what I want to share with you now is sort of a sneak peek of a roadmap. And I do recommend a roadmap for anyone in terms of these modern days and ages, especially with, I think things like concepts like metaverse, blockchain, augmented reality, virtual reality. So I think the best thing to do is to break it down into bits. I see the comment there in terms of being overwhelmed. So I just want to make it clear that this is not what people expect from a small library. So please don't think this is what all libraries should look like. I think, like we have a user experience librarian in our library that goes out and consults with people, it's very important to get that feedback from the community to say, what do you expect from us? What can we do to provide you? And that's the clear indication to say, okay, people have asked about 3D printing. Okay, more and more people are asking about 3D printing. Can we then provide that as a service for them? And if so, how? But to take what I've just said and say we need to do AI, IoT, blockchain, data analysis, it can be very overwhelming. So what I recommend is, what I typically do is I do roadmaps to say, kind of, and this is my roadmap. I'm not going to show you the full one. I'm hiding the last 2025 and 2026, but what will libraries look like in 2026? Are people physically going to attend a library? And if not, are they going to attend it virtually? So those are the type of questions that you answer or ask yourself. And then you start looking for those answers. So the first one would be, people will most likely make use of digital platforms to connect to a library. All right, so what do I need for this future virtual library? Okay, people will most likely use web-based platforms, or they will use augmented reality or virtual reality. Right, so now you have your technology stack for 2026. And again, don't do this in isolation. Consult with industry experts and so on. And you say to yourself, okay, now I've got until 2026 to have a virtual library. So then you start getting the technology, getting the training and so forth across the multiple years. So break it down into a large timeline so that it doesn't become overwhelming. If I tell you we need a virtual library by next year, I will fail miserably. And also the technologies and stuff change over over time. So this was 2022 in terms of what we wanted to do. So you can see their description of our library that says this phase will see us catching up with foundational systems. So with COVID, we obviously had a delay in terms of systems and so on that we wanted to deploy in the library. So the strategy for last year was to catch up with things that we couldn't really do during the COVID years, right? So enhancement of digital literacy. Digital literacy already, we wanted to evaluate that much earlier, but we were delayed. So we're doing it only this year, if you think about that. And because things are clear where we are right now, we can purchase equipment and stuff that's relevant that we need to do to attain it, right? So as the years progress, technology and things that you need to buy is a little bit unclear. Only when you're closer to that, you'll know what you'll be able to do. So now we look at this year as an example. So we've moved from catching up to foundational things to adding more services that enhances our digital footprint and make use of AI-based platform. So the one is smart library automation. So I mentioned that we're putting up a screen that you can find your way inside the library on your cell phone. And again, we're not doing this alone. We have a company that's assisting us to plan and do this. We're doing data analytics. So we're sitting with, our catalog data and all that kind of stuff. So we're looking at how we can tie in and use the different data sets that we have. We can improve how we log, like information specialists doing consultations. So we're looking at CRM, service management solutions, digital literacy adoption, as I mentioned. And then we're starting off with foundational metaverse, right? So you might have heard about the metaverse and these virtual environments. So for us for this year, we're not going to try and create it, just awareness, just for ourselves to figure out what's happening out there, do a little bit of research. What do we need? Tools and technologies that we need. And then there's different projects connected to it that we need to do in the year to reach those objectives. And as I mentioned, in the year, it's easier because it's close on what we need to buy and procure for that year. So you can see there our virtual reality headsets, high performance computers, machine learning, AI computer for the SDG hub, that type of stuff. That has happened because that I can do within this year. The further it gets, the more difficult it is to determine what type of technology and stuff I need to buy. But I can tell you that in next year, I'll have a clearer picture so I can update that. This roadmap's not static. It's a dynamic thing that changes because technology also changes. All right, so then we're going to start exploring digital literacy, or digital fluency. So digital literacy, very easy. That's the fundamentals, the basics that I need to conduct myself in a digital world. Digital fluency is where I have a good understanding of digital systems that I can move between different processes. So a very good example is I'm able to use Google Meet, Zoom that we're using now, and Microsoft Teams because I'm fluent enough to work on collaborative platforms. So we want to focus on that. Digital citizenship, right? So we are going to have in future people that are not going to come to a physical library. They want to come to our virtual space. So how we can accommodate our digital citizens in 2026. So we need to prepare that ahead of time. We need to plan with our roadmap to say, we will have digital citizens in 2026 that will visit our libraries. They'll never come to the actual physical library. So can they get the same consultation, the same access to resources, whether it's digitized, same consultation, training, that type of stuff. So we need to prepare for that. So I don't want to delve too much in these different elements, as you mentioned, it can be overwhelming. But what just wanted to show you is that with the roadmap, it's really nice to have that 5-year strategic roadmap. Obviously, the plan, we do this in our strategic planning at the institution as well, but to say where we are. And again, the closer you get to these different years, the clearer the picture becomes. Yeah, so it's been a wealth of information for you. So I understand that some of you can feel overwhelmed. But you have to tackle them in bits and bytes. You can't do all of the challenges that you have. So with that, I'm going to end off, and I'm going to go back to the slide for the challenges. Or perhaps, yeah, should I put the challenges or the strangers up for you? Let's put that up. I'm going to, please hold. Just want to do that. And then I'm going to allow for questions. Is that sharing? No. Let me share that. There we go. Share. All right. So with that, I'm finished with a lot of the information, but I'm going to open up now for some questions and answers. So please feel free to ask away.
Colleagues, good morning once again. Mr. van der Walt, let me start taking this opportunity, even though I'm the one who's sharing this. I am also overwhelmed, and thank you so much for this presentation. It's so thought-provoking, too much information, more especially for us in government libraries. I believe that our colleagues in academics library and colleagues in public libraries are more advanced, especially the international public librarians. They have a lot of artificial intelligence, which they are busy helping their communities out there. But with us here in government, I'm talking about where I am now at the National School of Government. I don't think my organization is ready for that. I believe that in the near future, we'll get the new librarians who are more computer literate and who will be able to take everything forward. But the main problem, as one colleague have already mentioned, is the budget constraints. When you talked about computerizing the library, there is no budget for that. But I'm happy. You also mentioned that you'll avail yourself for training. I think
Yes.
that in that our next move now is for us to, as special library colleagues, we need to have a workshop where we can be workshopped. That's my intake. And then I thank you so much. This was very interesting. Thank you so much, Isak.
Yeah.
And colleagues,
It's only a
as
pleasure.
Isak have already said, it's time for us now to engage with him so that we can get the clarity. Thank you so much. The floor is yours, colleague.
All right, thank you. I just want to see, I see there's a few questions online in the meantime. So let me start by addressing them first. So the first one is, how are staff members in terms of feeling adopting these initiatives at the UP Library? So I think the library has become a little bit more, how can I say it, sensitive in terms of, no, it's not sensitive, accommodating. Initially, when we started off with the Makerspace back in the day in 2015, you know, we had people asking like, why are you giving up student study space for this weird concept? You know, and it's only now where the Makerspace features in so many things. It's such a progressive environment that it even, you know, is on the university's official flyers and so forth. So without realizing it, and I think that has kind of proven to not just the institution, but also the library staff that, you know, the library, you know, is serious about the things that it approaches, and staff have become a little bit more, you know, open to new concepts and new ideas. We also follow a very diligent process when we do change management. A good example was Libby in the library. So Libby is currently sick at the moment, so she's out of order at the moment, but we're trying to resolve that. But if I had to go and put Libby down in the front of the library and I tell staff this is the new robot librarian, you know, people would be very negative about that. They would reject the robot, the use thereof, and obviously the project would fail. But what we did is we made people aware of, first of all, we're trying to experiment with a robot. We want to explore it. This is how it's going to help people. It's not going to replace jobs. It's not going to replace individuals. We're simply embracing these new technologies and giving people exposure to that. And we had information sessions with staff also to inform them, this is the change, this is what's going to do. So people are also a lot more receptive to these initiatives when we do them. So the staff are very, very accepting of this. And again, as I mentioned, we are doing the digital literacy assessment with the whole library in next week, but we're going to follow change process communication to also use that in terms of participation. The next question I have there, apologies if I'm just answering the first ones, is obviously, is there a way to get involved outside of the university? Corporate library. All right, so what we first of all can do is a lot of times we do accept visitations from external corporate environments as well. We've had BMW and the likes of so on here before. So we can arrange a visitation and obviously explore what other opportunities there are to visit, whether it be informal or formal agreements. So please, you can reach out to me in terms of that. We've assisted TVET colleges as well in terms of visitations and looking at how we can assist that. Right, so I just want to see here, current librarian computer instruments. Oh, yes. Okay, so it's just a comment there. Well, I think so how we can support special libraries is obviously to, in terms of these information sessions, we can provide that type of support and also validation in terms of the direction. I think, I'm taking a stab in that I do think in a lot of areas we are ahead. We had a visit from IFLA international members a while ago, and they also confirmed that we, quite progressive as a library. So it makes it easier for other libraries to approach and try different strategies if they have another institutional library as validation and also as an example of how things are implemented successfully. It's always difficult to say to someone, we need to buy a 3D printer, get budget for it. But we can definitely provide support and training. What we can also do is we have the university's enterprise wing. So what we can also do is, let's say a special library has a specific set of requirements. They want training on AI, they want training on digitization, whatever the case might be. We can create a custom training course for that, and they present that through our enterprises wing for people to attend, and it's an official training course that we can provide. So we can definitely provide that type of support as well. All right, so I just want to see standardized way when is done. Okay, so yes, in terms of the book and the RFID scanning, there's obviously specific technicalities in terms of the type of RFID. You have to, for those, it's ideal if you use ultra high frequency RFIDs that you put in your books, and you also have to put them in specific locations within the books, but not on the spine to say that you're actually working on that. So I just want to see, is there... So in the book drop robot, there's not a sorter within that robot. This is a question about the book sorter robot. So the sorting happens at the back office. So the robot just literally picks up the books, takes it to the back office and dumps it. And then based on, they have these tilting slides. and conveyor belt, and that determines which book is going to drop where. So as soon as the book passes and the RFID detects that it needs to drop in bin number B, it will drop into bin number B. So let's see. Let's see. Okay, so I know there's the up and coming Liaza conference comments. So in terms of collaboration, we do a lot of collaboration just, in the sense of this type of awareness making and so forth. So I want to extend that we can perhaps look at structuring training courses for public libraries. And it can probably be an initiative that we can launch in 2024 to kind of, in consultation with you, figure out which areas can be beneficial and then offer that to library groups. I think that's a possible way. Then obviously library staff more accommodating. Yeah, I think COVID kind of pushed everybody into that domain where everybody had to participate in the digital world. We couldn't get away from the fact. But it also highlighted then that there's a gap, in certain areas. Suddenly we had majority of people that can attend a virtual conference or virtual classroom or whatever, but we also then saw a lot of the disparity in terms of people that didn't have access to a laptop, access to internet, and those type of stuff. But people are more accepting of receiving an online invite. I just take myself as an example. Prior to COVID, if it was a consultation, whatever, people either had to come here or I had to go there. And now it's a common theme for people to attend an online presentation. And even some of our own information specialists do virtual consultations, virtual training classrooms as well. If, our current library that I'm sitting in, Morensky 2, you're busy with the construction project to get our safety standards up and running. So we do discourage people to come to the physical library. So we do provide a lot of virtual consultations and so forth as well. All right, so let me see if there's questions people want to ask them directly.
I don't see
Right, so-
any hand. I don't see
Alright.
any hand, Mr. Pandaval. I
Okay.
think colleagues, they are overwhelmed and then there are too much information. You have just done the good job. They will contact you because you have already put your contact details there. If they still have some more questions, they will contact you. I need
All
to, at this moment, to hijack my colleague, Erna Morstad, to thank you. Erna?
Yes, I'm here. Mr. Van der Walt, from all of us, we would like to say thank you very much for this eye-opening presentation of you. I think I agree with the other people saying we are overwhelmed, especially those of us that's in the smaller special libraries, government libraries. I mean, we know about things happening, but we don't know the details like you've shown us today. If I think back years ago when I was a third-year librarian student, they told us libraries must be aware computers will come to libraries one of these days. And we actually have to have a course that we have to take to get used to computers. But at that stage, it was that big computers that standing the whole room. And you have that punch data cards and so on. So yep. I'm really overwhelmed. Thank you very much for your time to give us these presentations. We really appreciate it, and have a nice day.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And just a reminder that never try to approach all this stuff alone as well. We're there as well to provide guidance. We also need guidance sometimes. So please make use of that opportunity. Thank you, Anna and colleagues. I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, colleagues. Apelele, can you arrange a photo shoot for us?
Okay, no problem.
Okay, colleagues, those who
Thanks,
are
everybody.
willing to take a picture, they can start to open their videos. Apparently, will take a picture. Ready, Apelel? You must tell us.
Yes, I'm ready.
Mhm.
Let me take another one. Done. Oh, people are still opening their cameras. Let me take another pictures as well.
Yes.
I see Mariette.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, thanks
Okay.
everybody.
Thank you so much, colleagues, for taking your time once again. Thank you so much, and I hope we learn a lot. Bye-bye. Thank you, Mr. Van der Waal.